Imagine meeting a man who owned private islands, multiple mansions, a private jet, and moved effortlessly among billionaires, royalty, scientists, politicians, Nobel Prize winners, and celebrities. He never built a famous company. He never invented a revolutionary product. He never became a Hollywood star. He never founded a bank. Yet somehow, he lived like one of the richest men in America. For decades, almost nobody stopped to ask a surprisingly simple question. Where did all his money actually come from? Today, Jeffrey Epstein is remembered for one of the most infamous criminal scandals of the 21st century. But long before the investigations, long before the headlines, long before his arrest, there was another mystery. A mystery that fascinated journalists, financial experts, and eventually, even the FBI. The mystery of his fortune. Unlike Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, or Elon Musk, there is no company you can point to and say, that's where the money came from. There is no famous invention, no billion-dollar IPO, no public investment fund, just an extraordinary lifestyle, and a financial trail that becomes harder to follow the closer you look. To understand why, we have to go back to the beginning. Jeffrey Edward Epstein was born in 1953 in Brooklyn, New York. His parents were ordinary working-class Americans. His father worked for New York City's Parks Department. His mother was a school assistant. They lived in a modest apartment in Coney Island. Nothing about his childhood suggested that he would one day own one of Manhattan's largest private homes or fly around the world on a Boeing 727, nicknamed by the media as the Lolita Express. Unlike many future billionaires, Epstein wasn't building companies in his garage. He wasn't showing extraordinary entrepreneurial talent. By most accounts, he was simply a bright student with a particular talent for mathematics. After finishing high school, he attended college. First at Cooper Union, then at New York University. But there was one important detail. He never graduated. Most people would assume that leaving university without a degree would close many doors on Wall Street. For Jeffrey Epstein, it somehow opened them. In the mid-1970s, Epstein landed an unexpected job teaching mathematics and physics at the Dalton School, one of New York's most prestigious private schools. It was an unusual appointment. Teachers there were normally highly qualified academics. Epstein had no degree, yet somehow, he impressed the people making hiring decisions. More importantly, Dalton educated the children of New York's wealthiest families. For the first time in his life, Epstein wasn't surrounded by ordinary people. He was surrounded by extraordinary wealth. Bankers, lawyers, corporate executives, investors. Whether he realized it or not, his network was beginning to grow. His teaching career lasted only a couple of years. Exactly why he left remains disputed. Some reports suggest he was dismissed. Others say he resigned. Whatever the reason, he never returned to teaching. Instead, he entered the world that would define the rest of his life: finance. Epstein soon joined Bear Stearns, one of Wall Street's most respected investment banks. Again, people were surprised. No university degree, very little financial experience. Yet there he was, working alongside some of the brightest minds in American finance. Bear Stearns specialized in serving wealthy clients. Employees who knew Epstein later described him as calm under pressure, intelligent, and unusually confident when speaking with extremely rich people. He seemed comfortable around power, comfortable around money, comfortable around people who intimidated everyone else. Within a few years, he had risen inside the company. Then, just as unexpectedly as he had arrived, he left. The precise circumstances remain unclear. Some reports suggested internal disagreements. Others cited violations of company policy. Whatever happened, His Wall Street career ended almost as mysteriously as it had begun. But instead of disappearing, he seemed to become even richer. And that is where the real mystery begins. During the early 1980s, Epstein founded his own financial advisory company. He claimed he specialized in helping billionaires protect and grow their wealth. Unlike traditional investment firms, his business operated almost entirely behind closed doors. There were no annual reports, no shareholders, very few employees, no public list of clients. The company rarely appeared in financial publications. Yet Epstein claimed he advised only people with fortunes worth hundreds of millions, or even billions of dollars. It sounded incredibly exclusive, almost impossible to verify. And that was exactly the problem. Years later, when journalists tried to understand how Epstein became wealthy, they discovered something surprising. Very few people could explain exactly what his company actually did. For most wealthy individuals, following the money is relatively easy. If someone founded Microsoft, the answer is obvious. If someone created Amazon, the source of their fortune is public knowledge. Even successful hedge fund managers leave behind investment records, partnerships, and years of financial history. Epstein was different. His wealth seemed to exist without the usual paper trail. The deeper reporters looked, the stranger the picture became. Former employees described an organization that appeared surprisingly small, certainly much smaller than you would expect from someone living like a billionaire. And yet, his lifestyle suggested almost limitless resources. Multiple luxury homes, private aircraft, a Caribbean island, expensive artwork, around-the-clock staff, security teams, drivers, pilots, house managers. Maintaining that lifestyle wasn't merely expensive. It required millions of dollars every year. And still, nobody could fully explain where that money originated. One relationship, however, stood above all the others: Leslie Wexner, the billionaire behind Victoria's Secret and The Limited. Meeting Wexner changed Epstein's life forever. Over time, Wexner granted Epstein extraordinary authority over parts of his financial affairs. He wasn't simply an advisor. He became one of the most trusted people in Wexner's inner circle. That level of trust surprised many observers. Eventually, Epstein gained control over valuable assets, including a vast Manhattan mansion that had belonged to Wexner. The house alone was worth tens of millions of dollars. For years, Epstein lived there as though it were his own. Exactly how their relationship worked has never been fully explained publicly. What is certain is that Wexner's trust dramatically increased Epstein's wealth, status, and credibility. Suddenly, doors that were already opened even wider. As the years passed, Epstein built something perhaps even more valuable than money: connections. His guest lists became extraordinary. Former presidents, foreign royalty, business magnates, scientists, university professors, technology entrepreneurs, Hollywood celebrities. Some met him at dinners, others visited his homes, some flew on his aircraft. Many later insisted they had little or no knowledge of his criminal behavior. Regardless of those individual claims, one fact remained undeniable. Jeffrey Epstein had gained access to circles that most people could never even approach. To outsiders, it appeared that his greatest business asset wasn't finance. It was proximity, knowing the right people, introducing powerful individuals to one another, operating inside elite social circles where trust was often built through personal relationships rather than public reputation. Whether that network generated enormous financial opportunities remains one of the biggest unanswered questions. As investigative journalists dug deeper over the years, they repeatedly encountered the same obstacle: opacity. Companies with little public information, financial arrangements hidden behind private agreements, property ownership structured through corporations, transactions that were perfectly legal, but incredibly difficult to understand from the outside. Some investigators concluded Epstein genuinely earned large consulting fees from wealthy clients. Others believed his fortune relied heavily on managing the personal affairs of a handful of billionaires. Still others argued that significant parts of his finances remain impossible to reconstruct because so much of his business occurred in private. Importantly, no official investigation has ever produced a complete explanation for the source of all of Epstein's wealth. That absence of clear answers created the perfect environment for speculation. Some theories were supported by evidence, many others were not. Separating fact from rumor became increasingly difficult. Then, everything changed. In 2005, police in Palm Beach, Florida, began investigating allegations involving underage girls. What initially appeared to be a local criminal investigation gradually became something much larger. Victims came forward. Witnesses were interviewed. Evidence accumulated. 3 years later, Epstein reached one of the most controversial plea agreements in modern American legal history. He pleaded guilty to state charges related to procuring a minor for and solicitation. The agreement allowed him to serve a relatively short sentence with unusual work release privileges. The deal was condemned by many prosecutors, journalists, and victims' advocates. People began asking difficult questions. How had such an influential man negotiated such favorable treatment? Who had protected him? And once again, money appeared somewhere in the background, not necessarily as evidence of wrongdoing, but as a symbol of extraordinary influence. After his release, most people expected his life of luxury to end. It didn't. His homes remained. His aircraft continued flying. His staff remained employed. He continued traveling internationally. To outside observers, very little appeared to have changed financially. If anything, the mystery surrounding his wealth became even greater, because by then, his reputation had suffered enormous damage, yet his fortune appeared remarkably resilient. Journalists returned to the same unanswered question. How was all of this still being funded? In July 2019, federal prosecutors arrested Epstein again, this time on charges of sex trafficking involving minors. The story became international news. News organizations across the world began examining every aspect of his life. Financial records, court documents, corporate filings, real estate purchases, flight logs, business associates. For the first time, a global audience became interested not only in Epstein's crimes, but also in the mystery of his money. Every investigation uncovered another piece of the puzzle, but none uncovered the entire picture. Only weeks after his arrest, Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his jail cell. Authorities ruled the death a suicide. Nevertheless, the circumstances immediately generated enormous public skepticism and countless conspiracy theories. Multiple official investigations later concluded that there was no evidence another person caused his death. Even so, public debate continues to this day. His death also meant something else. The one person who may have been able to explain every detail of his finances would never speak again. Today, investigators know far more than they did 20 years ago. Court documents, financial records, witness testimony, and years of investigative journalism have revealed important parts of Jeffrey Epstein's financial network. We know that he managed money for at least some wealthy individuals. We know that he accumulated an extraordinary real estate portfolio. We know that he cultivated relationships with some of the world's most influential people. and used those relationships to build a reputation that opened doors almost everywhere he went. But despite all of that, the central question has never completely disappeared. Unlike the fortunes of history's most famous billionaires, Epstein's wealth does not have a simple origin story. There is no company whose stock price explains it. No revolutionary invention. No public investment strategy that generated billions. Instead, his fortune appears to have been built through a combination of private financial work, exclusive relationships, and business arrangements that remain, even today, only partially understood. For years, investigative reporters attempted to reconstruct the path of his money. Every new court filing answered one question while creating two more. Who were all of his clients? How much did he actually earn from managing their wealth? How much came from investment advice? And how much from other financial arrangements that were never made public? Many of those answers may have disappeared with him. Perhaps that is why the mystery continues to fascinate so many people. It is not simply because Epstein was wealthy. The world is full of wealthy people. It is because his wealth never seemed to fit into any conventional explanation. The deeper investigators looked, the more complicated the story became. History will remember Jeffrey Epstein primarily for the crimes for which he was prosecuted and accused, and for the devastating harm suffered by his victims. That is, without question, the defining legacy of his life. But alongside that legacy remains another unanswered question, one that has occupied journalists, investigators, financial experts, and the public for decades. Where did Jeffrey Epstein's money really come from? Even after years of investigations, no one has been able to provide a complete answer. And perhaps that mystery will never be solved. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. Until next time, behind every fortune, there's a story.